It's how much do you put away as early as you can and let it work for you, okay? So I'm a massive proponent of retirement accounts for a number of reasons. Tax benefits, tax deferred growth, all that stuff. But another great reason is you can't touch it, right? If you've got 100 grand in your taxable account invested and you've got 100 grand in your retirement account invested, most people will figure out a way to have to tap that 100 grand in the taxable account. They will never get to their retirement account until they're allowed to. Why? Because the IRS kills you on penalties, right? We all know that. So they're great vehicles to avoid kind of general human nature and also to save. I think, I mean, these rules are changing all the time, and by the way, I am not a CPA, so I have to make that disclaimer. Anything when it regards to your taxes and, you know, what's best or not, you got to run by your CPA, not me. But SEP accounts for business owners like yourself are one of the simplest, best ways to go, okay? Because you get much higher limits in terms of what you can put in than a regular old IRA. Now, if all you do is an IRA, awesome, do it. But if you've got enough, you know, income and you want to put more away, set up a SEP account. They grow tax deferred. So if you put 10 grand in, and next year you look at your statement and you're fortunate enough that it's 20 grand, you don't have to pay taxes on that, you know, $10,000 of growth. If you sell everything in your SEP and buy new things and you realize all these gains inside your SEP account, no taxes owed, okay? That's the beauty of it. All the years it's in there, it goes tax deferred, tax deferred, tax deferred. When you go to pull it out, when you are retired, which you don't want to touch them before 59 and a half, okay? When you go to pull them out, anything you pull out is taxable income. So you pull out 5 grand, you've got to claim that 5,000 as taxable income. Make sense? At age 70 and a half, like every other retirement account for the most part, the government will make you take out at least a minimum. Okay? So between 59 and a half and 70 and a half, you can take as much or as little out of your SEP or any other IRA or 401k as you want. At 70 and a half, even if you don't want it, the government's going to say you've got to take at least a minimum amount. And the reason they do that, because they've let it grow tax deferred all these years, they want to get their hands on some tax revenue before you pass away. I mean, it's as simple as that, okay? So I do like SEPs. Now, if you are, go ahead.
When you take the money out of SEP, like when you put it into an IRA, does it reduce your income for the year?
Yes, yeah. So SEPs, yes. IRAs, there's a couple different kinds of IRAs, which we can talk about. Traditional IRAs, right? The old IRAs we all know and love. Answer to your question is yes, okay? There are some income limits if you're covered with a plan at work. I don't know, you guys have a 401k or anything? Okay, so yes. Okay, well, okay, well, I'll just go with it. Traditional IRAs, yes, you can deduct it. So it comes off the top, you pay that much less in income, right? So you make 75 grand, you put 5 grand into an IRA, you only have to pay taxes on 70, okay? Now, there are things, you probably heard the term Roth IRAs. Roth IRAs are great because when you go to pull out the money years down the line, it's totally tax-free. That's great. Now, the only issue is you fund it today with after-tax money. So you make 75, you pay all your taxes on the 75, and then you take whatever's left and put 5 grand into Roth. You get no upfront benefit for doing a Roth. But if that 5 million or 5,000 grows to 10 million bucks down the road, you know, you pull out the 10 million bucks, totally tax-free. So Roths are a great way to go. I generally recommend Roths more and more the younger you are. Just because if you're 60 years old and you fund a Roth, it's great, but you're getting no tax benefits now, and that money's maybe got 6 or 7 years to grow. You know, how much benefit are you going to get before you start tapping it? You're not going to get that much growth to be tax-free. Okay, but if you're 35 years old, 40 years old, and that money can sit there for 25 years, it can grow pretty high, tax-free, and then be tax-free when you pull it out. So yeah, so SEPs are a good way to go.
How much can you put in the SEP every year?
Changes every year, right? 2017, it's 25% of income or 54,000, whichever's less. So you can see, and it's somewhat flexible, right? So again, work with your CPA. But let's say you're killing it this year, having a huge year, and it's coming to be tax time. And by the way, you can set up your Sept in April, right? When it comes to be tax time. Now, don't wait till April 15th. But do it early. You can always do it early in the year. Turn around and fund it, and then just take it off your taxes. But your CPA would want to do it. But significantly higher amounts than an IRA. That's the benefit. You have a question?
Can you roll a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA?
You can. So remember what we just talked about. Traditional IRA, the regular old one, money goes in pre-tax, you get the tax benefit. Later on, you have to take it out, and you pay taxes on it. A Roth, no upfront, tax-free later. Can you take money from a traditional IRA and move it to a Roth? Yes. But the government's smart, and the government says that's a conversion, and any money you move from your traditional to your Roth is taxable income to you. Okay? So if you've got 100 grand in the traditional, and you say, boy, I'd love that to be tax-free later, yeah, we all would, right? Move it to your Roth, sure, you've got to pay an income tax on 100 grand in that tax year. So there are plenty of situations where it makes a ton of sense. If you're younger, if it's small amounts, okay? Sometimes it doesn't make a ton of sense, but here's one little trick on that. And by the way, there are some income limits to be allowed to convert, but they're pretty high, so it's probably doable. You don't have to do it all in one shot, okay? So if you have a real reason that you want to own a Roth, and it's more than just the tax benefits, there's some estate planning benefits. If you leave your Roth IRA to your kids, they can inherit it. It can stay in the Roth while they're growing, and anytime they take it out, it's tax-free. So a lot of people say, this isn't about me. I've got this Roth IRA. I want to leave it to my kids. You want to do that, but you're like, this is a big tax bill. You could take $100,000, divide it up and convert $10,000 a year over the next 10 years, and eventually get it all into the Roth and just pay income tax on that $10,000 each year, when you do it. So you can get a little bit creative with it, but anytime you do that conversion, anything that converts is going to be taxable. Make sense? Now, if you are having a really big year or you're ultra high earner, there are some more complex kinds of plans that you can do than Septs. Those are ones that it's kind of beyond the scope, but it would definitely be talk to your CPA. It's basically like funding, your own pension plan, some different things, and you can sock a ton of money away. But again, there's some cost to it. You got to look at the cost benefit and that kind of stuff.
Well, then you have to actually, if you have employees.
Yes, you got to be careful about that.
Yes.
Right. The IRS is very picky about you as a business owner setting up a retirement account that only benefits you. You may want to just take one of those and pass it around, right? So if you have employees that you pay and work under you, there are rules about if I'm going to set this up, I have to also offer them something as well. Okay. Now every plan is a little different, and there are some ways to kind of simplify that. But there are people who that's their only expertise, are setting up those kinds of plans, and those are the people you want to talk to. I'm passing out, again, because I have no idea what the time schedule is here, but
25.
to go? My word, I'm going to slow down, and you're going to go. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, we're going
You guys go with 25 more minutes?
Sure. And leave if if you're not. But all I'm passing out is a one-page cash flow worksheet. Again, this is 101. This is the stuff that you're like, man, I wish we would have done those 25 minutes because this is, but this is really, really important, especially when you've got a variable income. How well do you know how much you truly spend in a given year? Most people would say, I've got a pretty good idea. Well, do you include all those purchases where you actually pull money out of your savings account to cover? Or those are kind of off-balance sheet stuff, right? I mean, we all do some of that. I just handed this out because it's not anything you have to do. I recommend you go through it. But this will jog your memory because virtually every category you can come up with is on there, right? Especially in your business where you've got a lot of business expenses. How many of you, I'm not looking for hands, but the question is how many of you actually budget for your business expenses? Right? You know they're coming, I'm a big believer in I hate the term, but there's no other way to describe it, of using buckets, right? So all of you can open up a checking account. A lot of people just want to simplify it, we put it all in, whatever needs to come out, comes out. Doesn't work for me. I'm a big believer in, you know, especially in your business, where you're actually running the business. Come up with 2, 3 different checking accounts. Slap right in the title. You know, this is, you know, Sally Smith, business expenses. I don't know, you know, whatever it is. Tax money, emergency reserve. And when you get a settlement check, you fund those buckets, right? So that when your next big business dues or marketing or you name it expense comes up, you've already put the money aside. And you say, yeah, but what about the lean months? Well, yeah, but that's why, A, you've got to figure out your budget and how much should I be funding here, here, and here. How much, hopefully you've got money put aside in your spending account, because that's one of them. And hopefully you've been working to build up your emergency reserve fund, you know, as well. But the point is, get creative with your cash flow, because until you get really good at it, and you will, it's a habit like anything else, until you get really good at it, you have got to track it. I heard the old saying, you guys have probably heard this, but winners keep score. It's no different with your money. I can't tell you how many people I talk to, and I'm like, how much you spend in a year? And they're like, good question, I don't know. And that boggles my mind. I'm like, how do you not know how much you spend? Now, I'm willing to give you a little wiggle room, right? I'm not asking to the penny. But there's a big difference if you think you spend 75 grand a year and you really spend 120. And I can't tell you how many people that's the case. I've sat down with high net worth investors and they're like, oh, I got that 400 grand over at that bank. I didn't think, and I'm like, what? Like, how is that possible? You know? But people, it's just okay. Life happens. We're all busy. You got to develop the habit, though. A couple things about budgets. If you work on this, okay, you go home tonight, you're all fired up. You're like, I am going to tackle this, right? You open up a bottle of wine, you sit down, you start pulling out all your receipts, and you're like, I'm going to do this. Great. Do it, right? All for it. Just know one thing. Those numbers are going to change over the next 6 months. Because you think you know everything you spend. The reality is you don't. So I tell you that so you don't get discouraged. It's going to take you probably, on average, 3 iterations of doing this exercise before you really feel like you've nailed it. Because out of the blue, 2 months from now, something comes up, and you go, man, I didn't see that coming. And then you think about it, and you're like, yeah, I didn't see that coming, because it doesn't happen all the time. But actually, it does happen about once a year, right? And you go, oh, well then I should be taking 1/12 of that and trying to put it away so that when it happens. You know what a big thing like that is in our house? And everyone might celebrate different things, but in our house it's Christmas. Happens once a year. You're not thinking about it in February. I guarantee you're thinking about it in November. And most people are thinking about it saying, how am I paying for this, right? No joke, I learned this lesson a long time ago. We have a lot of fun at Christmas. Because when we go Christmas shopping, that money's there, right? And I'm not bragging, I'm just saying we learned the discipline. I went back and I said, how much did we spend on gifts for the kids last year? You know, is that reasonable? Too much? That's what it is. Okay, what's 1/12 of that? And we put it in there every month, right? You say, well, how do you do that? I'm going to give you, none of this benefits me, by the way, but I'm just going to tell you. There's a website, John's heard me talk about this 1,000 times. And there's other ways to do it, but this is just where I would start. I'm going to write it down here for you. It's called Envelopes. The letter M. Oops, look at that. Envelopes.com. Just like envelopes, but just start with an M, and then envelopes. What does it do? Anybody remember the old days when there was no electronics, and you'd bring home, you know, your paycheck for $1,000, and you'd pull out a paper envelope, and you'd say, this is for groceries, you know, this is for this, and this is for this, and oh my goodness, kids, guess what? We've got $10 left. I'm putting it over here. We're gonna have, you know, same thing. It's all it is. It's just electronic. Because who wants to carry around big envelopes of cash, right? So here's what it does. You go in there, it's like 99 bucks a year, okay? I am not part of this company. I'm not endorsing, I'm just telling you I use it. That's all it is.
Oh, that's how you spell it.
M, the letter M, and
Yeah.
then Velopes, MVELOPES.com.
Okay, I found it.
Yeah, so if
Got
you
that.
do it and your security gets hacked, don't come looking for me, because my security just got hacked too, and, you know, but I've used them for about a decade, and I've never had a problem with it. It's been very good. You basically go in there, you get a subscription, and you link up your bank account where you write your checks and do your cash flow and everything, and you link up your credit cards. My recommendation is have one. Nobody needs 16 credit cards, right? Nobody needs a Macy's and a Boscov's and a Lord & Taylor. They will all take your Visa card, believe me, okay? And you might as well get points, and you might as well get a benefit for the card that you're gonna pay off every month, okay? Once you get ahead of this game. Anyway, you take it, you link it with your credit card. Anywhere that you're gonna spend, you link it. And just like if you've ever used Quicken or anything else, anytime you log in, it's gonna pull up your register. And it's gonna have imported every one of your transactions that you've run through any account you link to it. So your checking account, right? Your credit card account. You go get gas for the car, it's gonna show up there. Sure. Yeah, there's plenty of places. I'm just telling you the one I used, so kind of conceptually. If you find better ones, have at it. Over here, on the other side of the coin, there are, guess, work with me here, envelopes. See where I'm going with this, right? You're gonna fund them electronically. When money comes in, you're gonna turn around and fund those envelopes. So hypothetically, you're gonna have a groceries envelope. You're gonna fund it with $1,000 or whatever number you think your monthly budget is. And lo and behold, when Wegmans or, I don't know, what's big around here, Giant, you know, that's pretty good, what's big around here? Giant, okay. Your Giant bill comes through your credit card, it shows up for $322.16. You grab it, you just move it over to your groceries envelope, and your groceries envelope drops by $323. Now you know, hey, I've got $673 to go for this month in groceries. Okay? Even that tool, you're not going to get 100% right all of the time. It's like your budget. You will go over some months, you will go under some months. I'm not asking anyone here to be a perfectionist, right? Or be perfect. But you will start tracking it, and you will be amazed after 6 months where all of your money starts to go. Okay? Plus, at the end of the year, you print out a report and say, all right, was my spending plan on? Was it off? And this is critical for anybody, but for you guys in this business, where you don't know if you're going to have a massive month next month, nothing the month after, right? These are the kinds of things that will let you take some control over your finances again, because quite frankly, I would guess it feels fairly out of control, a fair amount of the time. The nature of the business, yeah.
Does that application let you save your receipts?
That one does not. So, and I don't. I mean, if I need it, I keep a folder, right? So I have an envelope that would say business expense. And, you know, this client dinner comes in, and I grab it and I put it in the business expense folder. So now I know at the end of the year come tax time what I need to declare. I just take the receipt and I stick it in my, you know, my folder for the year under my tax file. You know, if I'm ever audited, I know I'm going to go grab that file and I'm going to say, have at it. It's there. But it doesn't scan your receipts. There are great software. I'm not even telling you this is the best software. I'm just telling you it's one tool to think about. You got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, like, a little bit of a different direction
Yeah.
from this. So, two things. One, we always talk about real estate as an investment.
Yep.
So, your clients, how much of their, just on average, of their portfolio is in real estate? And for us that are realtors that do invest in real estate,
Yep.
if you're, and I'll give you, make it a little bit easier, if you're like 40, 45, and you're just starting, what should your portfolio be
Yeah.
from a real estate perspective?
So first, I would need to differentiate what kind of real estate. So in other words, an investment property is different than a personal primary residence.
Okay,
You still have real estate
investment property that
exposure.
has a portfolio of, you're doing flips, but you have a stream of income from rentals.
Okay. So let me answer it this way. Most of our clients have a percentage in real estate. It doesn't look quite like that typically. Most of our clients are not out there flipping houses. Some do. I'm not being negative on flipping houses. I'm just saying it's different. And why aren't they flipping houses? Because they don't have the expertise. They might work with one of you to get good recommendations, but to them, it's just a lot of, energy and having to do it. So you're not seeing a lot of that. Investment properties, yeah, you see it. I would say whether it's, I'm gonna put a broad umbrella on it, whether it's they own REITs, which are real estate investment trusts, which are publicly traded securities made up of real estate, commercial properties, okay, or just individual residential investment properties, it's probably about 10% on average, right, of an overall investment portfolio. That's probably somewhat skewed because of a couple things. Expertise, okay? Real estate, unless you're buying REITs, is not the most liquid, thing in the world to most people, right? You guys do it every day, so you could price a house right, get to closing, do these things well and quickly. Most people, just mindset is like, that's a lot of work. So you just don't see people load up on it. But I will tell you this, people are either way committed to real estate or they're way committed to the equity and public markets or the like. You rarely have people who are like, I want to look at my pie chart and I want a third in real estate and I want a third in stocks. Because people are either passionate, but they've made fortunes in real estate, and there's no other way to do it, or they're Warren Buffett and they've only made money in stocks, and why would I, and I don't think either of those extremes are right. That's just the reality, right? It's kind of like me, right, where I sit. I might see opportunities through the course of a day or a week because I am listening, reading, hearing, watching on my screens, right? I've got a fairly good pulse on what's going on in the public equity markets. I might see more opportunities than the average person. So I would be skewed towards private, to equities. You, on the other hand, you've got a pulse on what's going on in the real estate market. You're scanning listings, you know what's there. You can spot a property and say, I know that area, that's 20% undervalued, And if you can do that, it doesn't matter if it's real estate, stocks, or whatever. If you can buy a 20% undervalued asset with the expectation of selling it for equal, weight, you should do it. So I don't tell people not to get in real estate or to, only do equities. It's more about how are you working to find reasonably priced stuff that you've got the highest probability of success, okay? Only thing, and I know you were going to say something, the only other thing I'd add to that, it's really important for people to understand, right, what's the cash flow yield on the real estate property. So one thing to own a $250,000 real estate, investment property, right, that spits off, I'm doing this math in my head, so bear with me, 12,000, and change a year in investment income, right? And you go, hey, that's like a 5.5% yield. That's pretty good. That is pretty good, especially today. But you got to pay for the upkeep. You got to pay for the taxes. You got to pay. So again, that's not to say don't invest in real estate. It's to say you've got to find properties that are valued correctly, so that your after expense, your true cash flow yield is competitive with another competing investment. And there are markets like here, right? Who wishes they bought every possible property in the state of Florida that they could right there? Yeah. In March of 2009, who wishes they literally sold everything they had and pushed it in to the equity markets, all in? We all do, right? But you got to have the money. You've got to do it. You've got to see the opportunity, and you got to be willing to do it. If I called you all up and said, we are down 50% in the equity markets, the world looks like it might end, we don't even know if the banking system's going to stay afloat, but I want you to go buy real estate or buy stocks, take your pick. What do you think you're saying?
Buy both.
No. Well, if you're smart, you're saying that. The average person's going, no. You do it with your money. I'm gonna wait till things calm down, right? So again, it isn't that real estate's better than stocks or worse than stocks. It actually works really well alongside stocks. Because a high inflationary market, which I actually think we're headed towards at some point, I mean, geez, we've been waiting for it for a while, but if we get inflation back in the 2 to 3% range, 4%, right? If the Fed is behind the curve, which we think they generally are, real estate's gonna ultimately, in some cases, outperform stocks at some point, because it's a real asset. So real estate in a portfolio makes sense. The question is how much, and a lot of that depends on the person, what their liquidity needs are, what their goals are. It's a very tough kind of question to nail, but I'm a big supporter of looking for investment properties if the price is right. Given what you guys shared this morning, I don't know if the price is right. It's not as easy to find those properties now, just like it's not as easy for me to find investment ideas for clients right now if I care about how much I pay. It's tough. Things aren't as cheap as they used to be. So, yeah.
What's your thoughts of OTC stocks?
So OTC stocks are what are called over-the-counter stocks. They are typically low-priced. There's different versions of OTC stocks, but when people say OTC, they typically mean the lower, stocks that are below $5 a share. They're sometimes listed on what's called the pink sheets, which means they don't have the same kind of regulatory environments, things like that. A lot of money can be made if you hit one right, but you could also have a lot of fun in Atlantic City. So, I've got friends who've come back from Atlantic City and said, that was the most fun I've ever had. I've made a ton of money. And I've had most of them come back and say, that was miserable. I never want to go back. Same with OTC stocks. Just think of your portfolio in general. It's like the food pyramid, right? You need a wide base of good, solid, foundational stuff that will survive all kinds of markets. And then ultimately, when you build a good base, you can speculate a little bit over here and over here, right? So that really cheap biotech stock that everybody's talking about because they're going to cure the world of all its diseases, yeah, have fun, buy some. But please don't buy it with your only $10,000 to invest because your hope is you're going to become, the next millionaire, because probabilities are, it's kind of like playing the lottery, right? Does that make sense? Somebody else had it. I saw someone else's hand go up, I think. John? you?
So I wanted to say something. I heard you say that in 2007,
Yeah.
you sold stock and everybody said you were an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to say this. He has expertise in that, the financial world, stocks,
Right.
things like that. We have expertise in real estate. And in both places, we cannot time the market, ever. Because I also heard you say it went higher than what you sold
Oh, yeah.
at the top. So
Yeah.
he didn't hit the top, he was towards the top.
Yep.
And he said, I did it because of my discipline, right? So someone came to me, one of our agents, yesterday, and said, I just got an opportunity of a lifetime to buy a house at $100,000. The family that I know, the grandma just wants $100,000 for it, as is cash, quick closing, because she has to pay assisted living $80,000, something like that, right now. And she doesn't have time for you to put it on the market, sell it, and then have inspections and all this stuff. She just can't go through it. Do you know anyone? And the person said, yep, me. If you want me to, I'll do this. Right? Great opportunity. Here's what the discussion was, though. Okay, we got this house for $100,000. If I put another 100 into it, I can maybe sell it for 300. But I have costs, closing costs on both sides and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to gain 100,000, but I'm probably going to gain 60, let's just say, especially with taxes and things that they're going to pay. Right?
Right.
But he could flip it right now and make 50. Someone will invest in it and say, I'll take it for 150 or whatever, right? with very little closing costs because he's not gonna put it on the market. And he said, what should I do? I was like, why go through being a general contractor, right? I'm just telling a quick story.
Totally.
Flip it now. Why go through putting 100 into it, not knowing if the market changes and starts to be a declining market by the time he's done with it? His prediction of 300,000 now just turned to 275. It could happen. So what I want to tell you guys is be disciplined and don't try to time the market, and don't try to tell your clients to time the market. Get them off of that, because motivation is much more important. You know, how quickly do you need to sell, and so on and so forth. We talk next month, yes.
Where's Grandma's house located?
I know.
Yeah.
I'll give her 105. Have a little auction here, and 110, anybody?
You know, yeah. He's already got it. All right, so the other thing is, next month, we're gonna do business planning for 2018.
Yep.
And one of the things we talk about is expenses. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay? And let you
Yeah.
tell from your perspective on money.
Yeah.
Okay? Because we, don't all, raise your hands, but a lot of us are really bad with money. We see shiny things and we buy them, and then we don't hold them accountable. And then we go, oh my goodness, that $30 or $50 or $150 is coming off my credit card every month, and I'm not checking
Yeah.
if I'm making anything off of it.
Yeah.
We do several of those sometimes. So what we are trying to influence each other is to cut expenses. So we know you cannot become wealthy by cutting in the business environment that we're in.
Yeah.
We're all independent contractors, we're entrepreneurial, but we can't become wealthy by cutting our expenses. They're just not enough. So we have to generate revenue, and that is the goal, right? But we want to cut expenses. What would be your advice to an independent contractor? I know with envelopes, it's a good thing because you're tracking.
Yep.
When we look at our budgets for 2018, what would just be your overall advice for us?
Well, I'd wrap that in a little bit with business planning too, because the one thing I learned, and please don't hear this as like I've learned all the, I haven't, but I'll never forget a lesson I learned early on was when you do your business plan, spend far more time thinking about what you're gonna do to hit those goals than what the goals are. Because most business plans say next year, I wanna sell, $3 million of real estate, right? It's a great goal. You're gonna sit down, that looks great on paper, right? I'm gonna make X, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, right? It's all good, but what activities do you have to do to actually sell $3 million in real estate? How many people do you have to talk to? How many seminars do you have to do? How often do you need to do those? And oh, by the way, guess what a business plan is? It's actually setting your calendar. You should know when you do your business plan what seminar, where, and what topic are you doing next September, right? And I'm only saying that because that's my own experience. I used to go into my boss's office all the time and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this club, I'm going to do this. And they're like, well, that's great, sure. I mean, that would be awesome. How are you going to do that? And I'd be like, I'm just going to do it. And you get in there, it's February, you haven't done anything, now it's March, right? So that's, number one is top line. You got to plan for top line, and you got to plan activity, not just numbers. When it comes to expenses, you really have to figure out, right, for every dollar of expense, what's my expected rate of return? And I guarantee you, there's a lot of expenses that you and I do in my business that has very little rate of return. Now, you know your business better than me, but that ad that you took out, right, in the local paper that runs every, once a month. I have no idea what these numbers are, so don't think, but, you spend, $300 a month on that ad, right? Have you ever tracked how many calls you actually get from that ad? Right? There's a huge amount of groupthink in sales organizations because you see somebody else who is successful doing an ad, and you go, well, then I need an ad because they're doing an ad because they're successful. Well, that person is not successful because they put an ad, in the paper. They're doing 18 other things, right? That ad is like the cherry on top, right? It's not, so you've really got to go through what are sort of non-negotiable expenses that truly add some rate of return to your business and what things don't, right? I mean, I'm not accusing anyone, I don't know anybody's backstory here, right? We all want to drive nice cars. Why? A, they're fun to drive, that's my take. But we don't want to take a client out, right? And look like we're barely making it. You know, I get it. You gotta fake it till you make it, that's part of the game. But does it have to be a Porsche? Or can a really nice Toyota Avalon work? Or, I mean, you know, fill in the blanks, whatever that is. That sounds crazy, but the difference in a lease payment of, you know, $100, if your car is nice enough, you know, why pay for the Rolls Royce? Because believe it or not, there are some people who don't want to get into the realtor's car, right? Who's driving the $90,000 car, because their first thought is going to be, guess their commissions are pretty high, right? Or their second thought's going to be like, that's not like me. We can't relate to this person. I'm not telling you that it's wrong to drive a nice car. What I'm telling you is you automatically think, because the next person does it, that buying the nicest car is the pathway to success, when it actually could be detrimental sometimes with a certain client or certain whatever. So I don't know if that helps, but really think through what's my rate of return on that expense, you know, that organization that I pay every year to be a part of, how many referrals am I getting out of that every year? Am I just being a nice guy, you know, showing up to do this meeting? You know, all those volunteer hours, which by the way don't cost you anything because you're trying to be out in the community, awesome. You want to be a good steward. You want to be in the community. But if you're doing it, you're never getting anywhere. One true story, I joined my local pool club board because I said, you know what, it's my town. I know some people on it. It'd be a good chance for me to network and get to know some other people. I signed up. It's like a working board, so I actually got jobs, whatever. There was like 3 other finance people on the board. And I literally spent the next 3 years as social committee chair, planning parties, right, which were a lot of fun, but I didn't get a lick of business out of that. Now, did I get some civic pride? Yeah, and I'm saying do it for those reasons, but you gotta budget your time as much as your expenses too. Does that
That's great.
help?
That's great. I think I want to influence everyone in here when they do their business plan to go to zero-base budgeting. Bring everything down to zero, and then put things back in the budget that you know you're getting some sort of return.
Yeah.
Or goodwill, or whatever you're looking for at that moment.
And I would just add one other thing. This isn't about getting your expenses as low as possible. It's about allocating your expenses to the highest rate of return things. So if you've got $10,000 a year of expenses, you do the exercise and you realize those 2 ads are getting you nothing. But this seminar program I did over here that was pretty costly, but I got 4 high net worth people in there, 2 of which became clients, right? I want you taking dollars from over here, and I want you funding that as much as you can, because you're onto something, right? So this isn't about getting to zero expenses. It's about saying, I'm only putting money into stuff that's actually going to drive business, period, end of story. Other than that, if you're not doing that, give it to charity, because literally you're just throwing it away. You might as well get a tax break, you know, and help someone else while you do it. Make sense?
That's great. Absolutely. Any other questions before we go?
So now I need to buy 2 cars, 2 different cars.
It depends.
As long as you can measure it, if it
The
works.
answer is almost always it depends.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, everybody, give Tucker a hand. I just want to thank you guys so much for coming. Watch for next month. I'm not sure it's going to be the second Wednesday like we always try. This month it was because of Mega Camp. We pushed it to the 3rd Wednesday. I do believe we're going to try to keep it on the 2nd Wednesday. Just look for the emails and social media that'll go out. But thank you so much for coming. I hope you'll come back.
There's some handouts up here on some different topics. Feel free to take